All right, let's dive into something that's always kind of blown my mind about stamp collecting. Have you ever looked at a tiny little stamp and just wondered, how can this one be practically worthless, while another one that looks pretty similar is worth a small fortune?
Yeah, this is the big question, isn't it? It seems totally wild. You could have two stamps from the exact same year looking almost identical to you and me, and yet one is pocket change and the other could literally buy you a new car. So, what gives? How is that even possible?
And look at this. It just shows you the insane scale we're talking about. This isn't just a couple of bucks here and there. No way. The gap can be tens of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. But, and here's the really cool part, it is not random. There's a system to it, a logic to the madness, and we're about to break it all down. That's right. The entire complex world of stamp valuation really just rests on three core pillars. And once you get these, you'll be able to look at pretty much any stamp and have a real framework for understanding its potential worth. So, you ready? Let's jump into the first and honestly the most important rule of all. Okay, rule number one is all about rarity. This is the absolute bedrock of value for, well, for any collectible, not just stamps. It's basic supply and demand, right? If something's incredibly hard to find, its value is just going to go through the roof. So the real question is, what makes a stamp rare in the first place?
Well, rarity can happen in a few really interesting ways. First up, you've got printing errors. These are the classics, like the famous stamp with the upside-down airplane. These mistakes are almost always caught, so the very few that escape into the wild, they become legendary. Then you have small print runs. This is pretty straightforward. Maybe a stamp was only made for a special event in a really small country. And finally, sometimes a whole bunch of stock just gets destroyed, by fires, wars, or even the government officially getting rid of the leftovers. Whatever the reason, the stamps that survived suddenly become way, way more scarce.
Okay, so you've got a rare stamp. Awesome. But that's only part of the story. Let's move on to rule number two, because this is a massive multiplier. See, it's not enough for a stamp to just be rare. Its physical condition is everything. I like to think of it as a report card. You can have two of the same rare stamp, but the one that gets an A+ is in a completely different league.
And this shows it perfectly. On one side, you've got your high-grade beauty. The corners are crisp, the original sticky stuff on the back, what collectors call gum, is pristine, and if it's been used, the cancellation mark is nice and light. But then you look at the other side. Oof, the low-grade version. Bent corners, maybe a tear, the gum's all gone, and there's a big, ugly postmark smeared all over it. Here's the kicker. The high-grade one could be worth 100 times more, even if it's the exact same stamp.
And that brings us to our third and final rule, the one that ties it all together. Demand. Think about it. You can have the rarest stamp in the world, in absolutely perfect condition, but if nobody actually wants it, it's not worth much. This is the human element. It's the passion, the fire that fuels the entire market. Because at the end of the day, something is only worth what someone is willing to pay for it. So what makes people want a stamp? Well, a lot of the time it's popular collecting themes that people just go nuts for. For example, stamps with anything about aviation or early airmail are huge. They tell the story of innovation. Same with classic monarchs, like Queen Victoria, they represent a whole historical era. When a stamp fits into one of these hot categories, you get way more collectors competing for it, and that just drives the price sky high. Now this right here is probably the single biggest takeaway from all of this. So many people think a stamp has to be ancient to be valuable, and that's just flat out wrong. A modern stamp with a major printing error that is super sought after can be far more valuable than a very common but much older stamp. It's all about that magic combination of rarity and desire. So let's put it all together into a nice, simple formula. You start with the baseline value from its rarity, then you multiply that based on its condition. The better the grade, the bigger the multiplier. And finally, you pour on the rocket fuel, demand. If it's a hot topic, that's what sends the final value into the stratosphere. Rarity, condition, and demand. Those are the three rules. So now you've got the framework. The next time you see an old stamp, you won't just see its age, you'll see its story through the lens of rarity, condition, and demand. Make sure to follow along because next time we're going to put this theory into practice and show you how to spot some of these rare gems out in the wild. Who knows what might be hiding in your attic?